Okay, so this is our discussion meeting. I found two friends. Friend Jen, husband Jonathan.
We're allowed to smile right now?
Yes, right now we can use all the expression we want. Okay, so I'm going to read the sheet, which says, "Thank you for attending my meeting today. You're helping me complete an assignment for my Intro to Communication course about the importance of language and nonverbal cues. Today we are going to have a conversation free of nonverbal cues for 10 whole minutes, hopefully. The rules are simple. First, we will quickly agree on a topic of conversation. For example, one person can ask a question to start things off. We have already decided that we are going to talk about how things change over the course of a relationship. And then the next rule is once a question is asked, all nonverbal communication is prohibited for the next 10 minutes. This includes gesturing, changing the tone, volume, and pitch of the voice, sounds, posture, facial expressions. It may be helpful for everyone to choose a posture, the same one, to sit in and maintain throughout the conversation. Everyone comfortable?
No. Yeah.
We good?
No.
Okay.
Good. I don't like this angle of me, though.
I don't feel right.
I don't feel right. I want to be like this, but that's not a good angle. So it's not happening.
I don't think the teacher really cares.
Can we move our head?
Huh?
Can we move our head? Or we just
I don't think we're supposed to limit movement as much as possible, so we don't give anything away. Okay, if that helps for you.
Okay.
The next one is you must attempt to have a complex and full conversation, and we have to try to do it for the entire 10 minutes. So that means everybody, even if you break character, try to get back into it and see if we can make it. So again, the question is how things change over the course of a relationship. Starting the 10 minutes now. We ready?
Yeah.
No movement. Go. Okay, so who wants to start things off?
Since I am in a new relationship, I guess I feel like maybe I should start things off.
Inflection.
And stop with the inflection. So, as you know, Ashley, I'm currently dating someone new.
Inflection.
Mm-hmm.
Monotone voice. So you are dating someone new. His name is Paul. What do we want to talk about Paul?
So, they say, experts always talk about how you have a relationship and the course of it can change over time as far as like affection. So if you start a relationship out and the relationship is you're not like super affectionate all the time, do you feel like that is going to maintain during that time? I mean, is it going to get worse? What are you guys' thoughts on it?
I think in the beginning of a relationship, the affection should be the most prominent, and therefore if you don't have it from the get-go, you're kind of in trouble because usually as a relationship continues, the affection and or at least the outward displays of affection seem to taper off, in my opinion. What do you think?
I would say that how do you separate affection from just pure, sex appeal?
Well, you can have affection without sex appeal because if I want to say hold your hand, that has nothing to do with any sexual feelings for you. It's strictly because I want the intimacy that comes along with holding your hand.
But do you think affection can be learned later?
Is it something that somebody can change?
Maybe as you become more comfortable in the relationship, the affection will grow, but I feel like some people are generally either more or less affectionate, and you see that in the beginning because that's when you're most excited about the relationship. It's new, and that's usually when you see the most affection.
So that's how I feel.
Is Paul not affectionate?
He's very touchy-feely. He's very affectionate, but not like in everyday like if we're sitting on the couch, or he'll come up behind me and wrap his arms around me. I'm trying not to inflect. And but in general, like during the day, he's not. And so,
like holding your hand and stuff. Then,
no,
or just like touching your arm.
He is very much like that. That's not an issue. But I am very affectionate, so I like to kiss, during the day. And
is it a public thing?
I don't mind whether it's public or private. Like for me, it doesn't make a difference. But we had the discussion today, and he said, he says, I'm not going to make out with you in the middle of the day. I mean, that's just not something I do. I keep that for the bedroom. That's just how I am. We talked about it. But my question is that, I said, well, that's fine. Obviously, I was married to a man that was very unaffectionate all the time. So I don't have an issue meeting in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is do you feel like that's
reasonable to have him meet you in the middle?
Hand movements and inflection.
It's really hard. Mm-hmm. So, right, is that reasonable for him to be able to do that, or for me to be able to do that? Do you feel like this early in a relationship, being that relationships change over the course of time, that is a reasonable?
I feel like I'm not good at answering that, or maybe I guess I can. I'm not a very affectionate person by nature. I don't often touch Jonathan just arbitrarily. I don't often try to grab his hand, or I didn't in the beginning. But recently, I've noticed that I've gotten better at making an effort to be more affectionate, whether it be holding his hand or resting my head on his shoulder or touching his arm, little things. So I guess maybe it can change, but it's taken me personally a really long time to get here. So
is that a trust issue for you?
I don't like to be touched personally as often. I don't need that sort of affection, so I don't think to give that sort of affection. What do you think, Jonathan?
I forgot the original question already.
A relationship, do you feel like it can...
do you feel like the affection levels can meet in the middle?
Yes.
Both parties can change?
Yes.
If you're that determined to make it. Everything else fits.
I think any relationship can be in the middle.
But even something like affection?
Yeah, no matter how extreme.
Do you feel like you've met my affection level in the middle?
Mostly.
Would you consider yourself more affectionate than I am?
I'd say we're pretty similar. So
it probably wasn't that difficult for us to compromise?
Me. I'm sure it depends on the importance you put on affection, and it sounds like he's not putting as much importance on it.
Or he does, but it's
different.
Privatized importance. Mm-hmm. He relates it to something personal and private.
And I relate it to a connection.
Like
an all-day connection with a person. Affection to me is connecting at different points during the day. No matter how, it might be 60 seconds, of something affection. Just having that moment. And it doesn't have to be every moment of every day. But whether it is in Costco, down the aisle alone,
mm-hmm.
Give me a quick, it doesn't have to be public. I don't care about public affection. I mean, I'm not going to make out with someone in the middle of Costco.
You're not 16.
See, we just screwed it up. Stop. Right.
Man, I really want to make that joke with a straight face too, and see if I could do it. I can't do it. Well, now it's not going to have the same effect. Do it. I'm not gonna.
So, I guess in a relationship, you just have to continue to compromise.
I think as long as both parties are willing to put in the effort and willing to try to meet each other, that it can happen. But it depends on like Jonathan said, the amount of importance you both put on it as to whether or not I think it'll have like any long-term effects. Because if it's not super terribly important to him, but he's willing to work on it for you, then I think you guys will be okay.
So, we think that it's really up in the air.
Yeah. I think it's like everything with people, it depends.
It's about communication.
Mm-hmm. So I like how things change over the course of the relationship turned into
Communication
and affection.
Mm-hmm. How much time do we have?
We made it about 9 minutes and then some. I think that's pretty solid.
I think so.
I feel like we've kind of failed a little bit anyway, so let's just call it a day.
I bet
you have like the most inflection.
You picked the worst person ever. That's all I do.
You're the one who said that you could do really well at
I
this.
thought I could.
I
really thought I could.
See, that's why I knew I wanted you in this too. I was like, oh man, she's gonna have such a hard time. Okay.
You weren't very monotone either.
I wasn't. I know.
Well,
I tried really hard in the
you
beginning.
did some.
And then I got into the conversation, and then all of a sudden it was gone.
Which we can finish this conversation another day.
Like, have real thoughts that you're not constantly thinking, like, okay, am I inflecting? Am I moving my hands?
That was very difficult. That was very difficult.
So, what were you able to communicate during the conversation?
Nothing.
Not a whole lot.
It's hard.
I feel like I was so like preoccupied with what my body was doing, what my face was doing, that I couldn't even focus on the conversation. No, and I don't think that's necessarily a fair interpretation of like what life would be like if we didn't have, nonverbal expressions, because we wouldn't have to think about it. We just wouldn't have them, It wouldn't be an option.
But how boring.
It would be very boring. Can you imagine if I would have, like, delivered a joke in, like, a monotone voice? Like, you probably wouldn't have even got it. Like, I have a very sarcastic sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would have any idea what I was talking about. I would just be really mean.
Yeah, but what if that's just the
but
way...
so would I!
Be so mean.
What if
Nobody
that's the
would
way
like
it
us.
was, though?
Without it?
Let's say 100,000 years from now, when we don't need nonverbal communication anymore.
Because we're just going to telepathically.
Do you think it'd be so boring? We have so much nonverbal communication right now because where we evolved from. That's all we had before. And then we developed language. We've only had language for like 10,000 years or so.
Yeah, but see, the thing that I like about nonverbal communication as opposed to language and being just straightforward is that you can learn a lot about a person by watching their body language, because a lot of the times, like, the complimentary hand gestures and stuff, that
or their smiles, or the glow in their eyes.
Yeah, and
You
just
like it
facial
because
expressions.
you're used to it, though.
No, not that. It's because I feel like it's more honest. Because you do that second nature. It's not that I prefer it. It's just that...
I'm not even saying you like it because that's what you've known your entire life. That's how you learn to communicate when you're a baby, is you mimic your parents. Mm-hmm. You learn nonverbal before verbal.
I understand
so you have
that.
affinity towards it. I'm not saying you prefer it. It's just, it's familiar to you.
What I'm saying, though, is I prefer it because you can learn more about a person through that. Like, you can tell me whatever you want, but if I see your shifty eyes and I see your unsteady hands, I can tell that you're lying to me.
No, it's very useful. Don't get me wrong.
Which is why I prefer it.
Yeah.
My only point is, like,
people that don't speak, the same languages. People fall in love.
Yeah.
And they can't even
That's
communicate.
the only way they can communicate is non-verbally, but then it's not much.
Right.
You really can't communicate without language, is the thing.
Well, you can, just on a different level.
No, but if you're talking to somebody who speaks Chinese and you don't speak Chinese, you start out saying full sentences, and then you go to words you think they understand, and then you go to...
Right. It's very difficult.
You try to point to stuff. And even then, are you really communicating? Not really.
But kind of, who are you to say what communication is?
Are you
it depends on what you're trying to communicate.
Hold on. Consider
I'm not
this.
saying you're looking for the bathroom, but if you're trying to explain to them what mathematics is, you wouldn't get very far. You need language for it.
Okay, her autistic daughter, right? Mm-hmm. She cannot speak yet.
Right.
But
I
doesn't
always
mean
know
that.
what she wants.
Yeah, it doesn't
Or
mean you
needs.
don't have an idea what she's trying to say to you. So she's learned other forms of expression. So to say that language is the only way that we
I'm
can
not
truly
saying
communicate
you're
isn't fair.
communicating. I'm saying, are you communicating?
Well, you're not communicating at the same level, of course not. No. Speech is definitely a step above, right?
What's that?
What?
Oh,
You can't
sorry.
whisper behind the paper.
I said, this is my debrief. He needs to stop.
Okay.
This
Oh.
is my
I
project.
just stopped.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Go.
So,
I stopped.
the next question is, what were some advantages of using only language to communicate? So, like Jonathan said, we can say whatever we want. We can articulate whatever we want. There are words for everything.
There's not going to be any question. I mean, sometimes somebody will say something like you said, and it might be interpreted differently because of their tone,
Yeah.
and maybe they sound really angry. But they're actually really excited, and we just don't know them well.
So
there's no chance of
Misinterpretation.
except
on the
if it depends on the person then. So I guess there's less likely to be misinterpreted if that's how the world was.
Yeah.
Because we would just be honest, we just say it. There wouldn't be sarcasm or snappy, because to do that you need gestures, right?
Need gestures and
Yeah.
inflection and
Yeah.
tone. Yep.
Yeah. So it would be much simpler, less like guessing.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Do you have anything to add? And then, what were some disadvantages of using only language?
You can't get across how important it really is. Like the subject that you're talking about, I feel like you can't.
You can't emphasize
this is really important to me versus
which you really like to
this
do.
is really important to me.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
So it's kind of like the flip side of
yes,
the other one.
It's the flip side. You really need both of them to honestly make it work. I mean, does anybody want to listen to a person that's just like duh duh duh? No. Nobody even wants to listen to you. The flip side is,
people would lose interest really quickly. Could you imagine listening to a professor or something droning on in the monotone voice?
No, you actually, I mean, the communication would break down because people would stop hearing you.
Yeah.
There's no interest. It's not entertaining. It's more entertaining to watch somebody that's
very animated.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe.
good.
I didn't mean to shut you down completely.
So
What are your feedback?
it's your turn now. I'll stop talking, then he has to say something.
Do you think you could live without nonverbal communication and use only language if you had never known nonverbal communication? I think we kind of started talking about this. And then what would it be like?
It would be normal. If we never knew about it, how would we know different?
That's true.
We don't know what it's like to be in the fifth dimension. Never been there. Do we miss it? Nope.
I agree. I don't think.
But what would it be like? Like, what would we do? How would we have humor and stuff?
Humans are amazing at adapting.
we
If you
would-
broke your leg today,
Yeah.
you'd get used to it in a few weeks.
If you do practical jokes on each other. Ha ha, wasn't that funny? Ha ha, wasn't that funny? That was so funny.
Yeah, we'd find new
Still
ways for
reflecting.
humor.
You're
I
emphasizing yourself.
can't do it.
That was so funny. Turn into robots.
But I've had this discussion with other people about like religion. With like Mark, I've had this discussion about religion, how he was so like, oh my God, you're not a Christian, like you don't fit in my box kind of a thing. But we've talked about how people are raised. I was raised this way. He was raised that way. That's all we know. And so it's no different unless you experience it. So I don't think it would be so hard. You don't understand unless you, he feels like he's been changed and his view on others is different now because he's finally experienced it. So I don't think we would know any different.
Well, we wouldn't, but I
don't think it'd be hard.
I just wonder what we would lose. Like if we would lose something
We'd lose a lot.
in not being able to express ourselves in both ways.
Our personalities.
You lose everything. You lose physical comedy. Charlie Chaplin never would have happened.
Yeah.
But you'd gain it in other areas. Like if we all couldn't use nonverbal
We
communication,
would learn to
there'd be
articulate very
there'd
well.
be areas of comedy we never even thought of that's all in language. There'd be more puns. There'd be more Shakespearean comedy.
Can you think like I
But will we laugh? Can we laugh if there's no
inflection?
inflection?
I mean, laughing's a form of communication. It's nonverbal, technically, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't have laughing.
Who knows?
You're just in your head. You're just like.
I don't think humans are
Would you
hardwired
say
that
that's
way.
funny? Would you say, okay, that was funny? That was a funny thing
Maybe.
that just happened. Just
Yeah.
have to articulate it.
People with dystopian.
Well, hopefully that never happens. And then the last question is, if you had to choose, which would you choose to live without, language or nonverbal communication?
Language.
Language.
Nonverbal.
That one's tough. Probably.
Because I'm so nonverbal.
See, that's
I'm
me. Like,
verbal
I'm very
and
animated.
nonverbal.
I talk with my hands.
Yeah, you tried charades, right?
Huh?
How hard is it to tell somebody what a tea kettle is rather than just
But
a
if
tea kettle?
you were born into that and that's all you knew was how to express yourself through nonverbal
then
communication, you would be better
What's the
at it.
scenario? Are we giving up today, or are we giving it up when we're born?
Well, we're giving up today, so future generations would.
I mean, for us alive today, nonverbal would be easier to give up. It'd be less fun, but it'd be easier.
Well, I agree with that. I'd say for that, but I think
But if I had a personal choice, it would
I would say
definitely
language in the
be
future
language.
because, like you said before, we've learned to communicate. Like, language wasn't always a thing, and we did just fine, you know?
And I feel like having, like you said, Brooklyn.
Yeah, but even then,
Yeah.
we created language.
I feel like she lets me know.
Yeah.
You just
I
figure
mean-
out new ways.
Yeah, to communicate.
Yeah, I feel like you could relate on more intimate, personal levels that way rather than as superficial as you can with language. With
So-
language, I can say whatever I want,
But we
and
still use informal language. I was talking about like formal language, like written language. Like informal language, when they grunt, oof, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's language technically. Like when they would
Yeah.
draw symbols, when they would.
see, I don't know that draw symbols counts in
Language.
this.
It's
Well,
not-
maybe it does.
Oh,
Well, I know in
ask
this
your teacher.
Well, in this particular scenario, we weren't allowed to obviously write down notes and pass them back and
Right.
forth. So maybe it could, but that's also
Like, hey, this is supposed to be funny.
Well, you should be laughing at this in real life. But this
But
was
I'm
also
monotone.
Just verbal and nonverbal.
well, yeah. So we couldn't write down language, but the language we have now is so developed, that I don't know if necessarily symbols would count in the same way, or the grunts would count in the same way because it's so undeveloped.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you guys for helping with my debrief.